and welcome to my channel. My name is Alice and today I am going to be showing you these brand new pastel Ohuhu art markers. These are double tipped alcohol markers. One side is brush, one side is a chisel nib. These are brand new. They literally just launched a few days ago. This set includes 48 pastel colors that are not included in any of their previous Honolulu series, as well as a free blender. They currently retail for $44.99 on Ohuhu's website, and they are now available. So shout out so much to Ohuhu for sending me these markers and for sponsoring this video. I really appreciate it. And it's gotten me on a total pastel kick in my art, which if you've been following me on my Instagram, you are very, very well aware of. So let's talk about what we're doing, how we're using these markers, what the color selection is like, how they perform, and all of that good stuff. So first of all, I'm working on just regular Express It blending card using these markers, and I am filling in an illustration that I did for a shirt that I designed that is currently for sale on my Etsy, as well as prints of this final piece and the original. If you've been around on my channel for a while, then you know that I used to use markers quite a bit. In fact, some of the reasons that my channel actually started to blow up when I first got a little bit more popular was because of a lot of 1 marker and 2, 3 marker challenges. But since then, I've really gotten into watercolor and gouache, and I really haven't worked with markers very much. I've played around with purchasing a couple just to review for you guys, but I really hadn't been playing with markers very much at all until Ohuhu emailed me and asked if I wanted to try a pastel set. Now, a pastel set really caught my attention, and I said yes. And guys, I'm really into markers again. These markers straight up got me back into markers. I forgot how much fun they were. It's just such a very different experience than watercolor. And don't get me wrong, I do love watercolor. It's my favorite medium. But it was really nice to go back to a medium that I hadn't used in quite some time and rediscover it. And the techniques that I used in this, as well as the colors, really inspired the rest of my art and have still been inspiring the rest of my art. And working on this really helped create a definite creative direction change for me in my artwork, which was very cool. I'm pretty picky with my markers. I won't use markers if they don't have a brush tip. Thankfully, these do. The brush tip on this is really nice. It's very solid. They're like normal Ohuhu brush tips. They're like not too floppy, if that makes sense. I don't know if you've ever used a brush tip where it's like way too floppy and you have a really hard time getting fine lines or controlling it. These are a perfect mix between being like springy enough and not being too soft and floppy, the actual nib itself. So you have a lot of control. They blend really beautifully, and I found that the colorless blender was a perfect inclusion, especially because we're working with so many pastels, which means I'm blending a lot more into the white of the paper than I would normally. You can also use that colorless blender to lighten some colors. I just used it on the corner of the cheek to add in a slight rim light, and it just lightened up some of those colors. This works really well, especially because they're pastels. I created 2 pieces with these. The first piece that I created was just to play around with them and experiment with them, and I don't have a recording of that, but I do have a picture of it on my Instagram. I created this little pastel landscape, and I used the Ohuhu paper for that, and that was really fun. They blended beautifully, so if you already have the Ohuhu marker paper, these work so great on that, and the colors were just so inspiring to me. It's a 48 color set, and when I look at the actual color distribution, it's definitely a little bit more heavily weighted towards blues, purples, and some pinks. There's also a large variety of pale peaches, yellows, and kind of like lighter skin tones. And then I find that the smallest selection is the greens. There are still a decent selection of greens though. I think there is 6 greens from what I can see, and then a variety of different grays. So it really does cover the entire spectrum of pastels. This set works beautifully as a standalone set. This was the piece that I created only using this set. I didn't use any other Ohuhu markers, just the markers that came with this set. And my previous piece I also completed just with this set. But if you do have the other sets of Ohuhu markers that include darker colors, this would be a great accompaniment set to that because it adds in a lot of those lighter colors, which I know that when I was first working in marker, I had a lot of issues finding colors that were subtle bottle, that were lighter, that weren't as saturated. And one of the things that I really appreciate about this set is it has a really good variety of colors that are genuinely extremely light, colors that are a lot less saturated, as well as colors that are pale but brighter, which is a great variety and allows me to create pretty much everything that I've actually wanted to create with markers. Sometimes I would get frustrated with markers that there wasn't the color selection that I wanted, and it was nice to finally have some of the colors that I've really been craving to use here in this marker set. I have a video on how I use markers, but for anyone that's curious, I'll go over my basic technique, and if you want some more in-depth tutorial, then you can definitely check out that video. When I use markers, I am not a marker artist. As I said, I used to dabble in markers a lot more, but now I am much more of a watercolor artist and a painter is what I consider myself. So my technique may not be the technique that you normally see. I just kind of go with what feels best to me. I prefer to almost exclusively work with the brush tip. I find that it gives me a lot more control, and I use a lot of feathering techniques to blend. So I will flick the brush, and then the very tip of the brush will be lighter, and you can kind of feather that into the next color. And then I'll layer up colors on top of one another, constantly layering and blending to create the smoothest blend that I can. That's one big thing that I do in markers, is I tend to treat them a little bit like watercolors, and I will use a lot of different layers, building up colors, adding colors on top. I also heavily use my colorless blender. Some people like the colorless blender, some people don't because they don't like the effects that it gives. I personally am a big fan of it. So I'll use that not just to blend things into white, but also to potentially lighten colors, to add extra dimension to colors, to mute, tone down colors, mute them down a little bit. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with the colorless blender. You can even use it to essentially kind of create very blurred out, very almost like watercolor type effects. Like sometimes I'll put color down and then I'll just saturate it with the colorless blender to create a very kind of wash-like effect. The markers blended beautifully, just the same as the other Ohuhu markers that I've used in the past. And like I said, I just found the colors really, really inspiring, and it's literally been influencing my color choices in my paintings, whether they're watercolor or acrylic, and I keep coming back to these markers just because the colors are just so inspiring. I don't know, I feel like pastels are so often associated with spring, but I kind of love the idea of a pastel winter, especially vibing with the snowflakes. I've been really into kind of blues and purples and pinks, especially in combination with snowflakes. So that was really the vibe that I was going for here, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. The markers are really juicy. I didn't have any issues with any of them being dry or anything like that. They were all super juicy and super easy to use, and none of them started running low early or anything like that. I've used them for 2 full pieces and I haven't had any issues with them yet. Once I kind of had more of the marker side in, I decided to go in with the Papermate flares. If you guys haven't used these you can find them in the stationery aisle in Target, Walmart, pretty much any store. And I really, really enjoy them. They are water-based, so I usually use them after I've done all of the coloring. I personally prefer to put my lines in after I finished coloring myself. And the reason for that is it just gives me a little bit more flexibility when I'm coloring and adjusting the actual facial proportions. And once I know things look good, then I can go in and do the lines around that. I just kind of prefer to do it that way. And that works best because, as I said, these are water-based and they can smudge. If you're adding, if you add water on top of them, they will smudge. When I added a little bit of marker around them, it was actually surprisingly didn't seem to make it bleed, but I still wouldn't take the risk and use them before it if it was me, just because they're not approved for that. So I added them in afterwards to create this really kind of cool linear effect and add in various highlights, highlighting the planes of her face. It's just a technique and style that I've been really interested in recently and find aesthetically pleasing. The reason I like these is because you can get sets of, I don't even know the biggest set, but they come in so many different colors. I just got at least 20 something set recently, and you have so many different colors, including lighter colors and lighter pastels, which I often find hard to find in fine liners. So that's one of the reasons that I'm using this, because I have so many different colors that I can really adjust it and use those colors in certain places. So I'm kind of changing the colors that I use for the line art depending on where I'm using it. And I think it really helps to pull everything together and add a finished look to the piece. And I think it looks really, really nice with the markers. So if you have these pens for like bullet journaling or anything like that, and you've never actually tried incorporating them into your artwork, I definitely recommend it. It's one of my most used supplies. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I want to tell you guys about the markers themselves, but I think I've covered pretty much everything. They are definitely in line with the quality of Ohuhu markers that I've come to expect, and the color selection, which is really what we're here for, is so beyond gorgeous. I know that a lot of people have been getting really hyped about these pastel markers. I've seen a lot of excitement about them, and I can personally say that I really enjoyed them, and I think they're worth the hype. So hopefully any of you guys who have them will enjoy them, and I'm really excited to see kind of like all the pastel works that come out of these, because I know a lot of people that have already started to order them now that they've finally been released. I am a sucker for metallics, as you all know, and so I wanted to add in the snowflakes in her hair with this metallic. So I used my Uniball. I really love using these for adding metallic details really quickly and easily. They're the Uniball Signos. This is the silver one. I also have the gold, and I use the white for my white gel pen. They're freaking fantastic, and you can see how shiny and sparkly and pretty it is. I don't know. I love it, and I really love it with the marker. I always forget how much I like the look of marker when it's dried, because it's very smooth and kind of flat, but also there's like a slight noise or a slight like noisy texture to it, and it's just very unique, and I think it's very pretty. So I also used the silver to do her earrings, which were kind of snowflake inspired. And then for the background, I used the markers to add in some kind of like cold, chill, I don't even know what to call it, wispies, whatever. And then I filled in the snowflakes with both the markers for the larger ones, and then for the smaller ones, I went ahead and used the Papermate flares just because they're a little bit of a finer tip. And that was pretty much how I created this piece. I know this video wasn't necessarily like a tutorial, but I do hope that it gave you some ideas of how to use them. But more importantly, I hope that you got to kind of see how these markers perform, and if there's something that you would be interested in, if like they're worth the money for you. I just know a lot of people have been really excited about them, so I'm hoping that showing you how they actually work and what the colors look like will help you make a decision on if that's something like an art supply that is going to be a good fit for you. Personally, I'm super stoked about them, and they've like gotten me back into markers, which is always fun because don't get me wrong, I love watercolor, but I feel like sometimes you get so focused on the specific supply that you're comfortable with that you forget to go out of your comfort zone. And there's so much value that you can learn from working in another medium that then you can take back to your preferred medium later. So I definitely recommend, whether it's working in markers, acrylics, whatever your main medium is, try something different, because it really does help, and it really can help give you inspiration then to pull back from. So yeah, I hope you liked this video. Hope you liked my art. If you did like it, there are prints available of this piece, as well as the original for sale in my Etsy, as well as shirts with this design on them. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff with this picture on it if you do like it. Thank you again to Ohuhu for sponsoring this video and for sending me these markers. I really appreciate it. I'm having a great time. One thing that Ohuhu mentioned to me when they were talking about their goal with these was that they really wanted to basically like paint up inspiration, and they want their art supplies to bring you back to this like childlike state of awe and wonder, and like encourage, no matter who you are, encourage you to draw. And I actually really vibed with that, especially with this pack. Just the colors are, I don't know, they just really unlocked this different part of like creativity in me for some reason, and made me really feel like, I don't know, like I was a kid again in a way, and I definitely vibed with that. And so I feel like if that was their goal, I do think they accomplished it, which is good. Since recording the video, the markers are currently out of stock, but they will be in stock back soon. They should hopefully be back on stock on ohuhu.com, like maybe by the time this video goes up. And then on Amazon, they should be back in stock on January 1st. And they should also be available to people in Europe now as well. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, don't forget to check out my socials, Instagram, Twitter, and I stream 4 times a week minimum on Twitch, so check me out there. Check out my Etsy for stuff with this design on it and other prints and things. Thank you so much for watching again, and as always, have a great rest of your day. Bye, guys.